I want to welcome back to the program. Listen, first of all, great guest, but also a Republican who should have a smile on his face for a huge primary victory, Governor Brian Kemp. Welcome back.
Hey, great to be back on. Thanks for having me.
You got it. Listen, the eyes of the Republican world, but it seemed like much of the political world have been on you for longer than I'm sure you would prefer. Your primary race against Perdue was thought to be, this incredible fist fight of different factions in the party. Well, it looks to me like you united basically all of them, 73%, almost 74% of the vote that you get. I mean, you got to be feeling pretty good about that.
Well, we are. I tell people all the time, there's only two ways to run: unopposed and scared. And I had more than one opponent, and we knew this cycle was going to be tough. But even before, COVID started and the 2020 election stuff happened, I mean, it's just what we went through in 2018 was a dogfight, and we knew what the political environment was, and we certainly had known what it was going to be going into the race. And so when I kept drawing primary opponents, I mean, we just, we never let it rattle us too much. We kept building our ground game out again. We kept raising money the whole time. I mean, over the last 3 years, even during COVID, which was really hard to do. And, I knew I was going to be in this kind of fight that would end with me running for governor again against Stacey Abrams. And that's where we are. And also stayed focused on the official side of being governor. And I think that's what a lot of people didn't really realize. I was serious when I ran in 2018 about telling people what I was going to do. And I was serious that when I got in office that I was going to do that and do those things. And I did those. And it's a good record for us to run on. And I'm not just talking about me. I'm talking about the members of the General Assembly and our other constitutional officers. And I think that's one reason the longer the primary went on, the more people started realizing, this guy's done what he said he'd do. He's followed the law and the Constitution, and he's the one that can beat Stacey Abrams. Because that's what people are worried about, Josh. They're worried about how quickly Joe Biden has eroded the country. Stacey Abrams, was quick to take credit for Joe Biden getting elected. And she agrees with all these policies and ideas he had, and look where it's gotten us. And that's what people are scared about. And that's what we're going to remind them of. And, remind them of the things we've been doing to help Georgians fight through these disastrous policies in Washington.
Yeah, well, listen, you and your team did a sensational job of doing exactly what you just articulated, which is taking the accomplishments that you've had as governor and actually talking to the people of Georgia rather than allowing sort of national narratives of what your race ought to be about take hold. And I think that takes a lot of discipline.
No, we definitely stayed focused. We had a great team. The other thing is we're building off of a really strong foundation. I give, Governor Sonny Perdue and Governor Deal a lot of credit. They both, in my opinion, were great governors. I got to work with both of them through my time in the legislature. And then when I was Secretary of State, and the economic success that they had and the things that they did to fundamentally bring conservative governance to the state of Georgia, I think especially Governor Perdue doesn't get enough credit for. And so we had a good foundation to build off of. We also had a good team in the legislature that we've been working with. And even if you look at the 2020 election results, while we had a disastrous night in Georgia at the federal level, our state guys, our legislators that ran on the issues that we had all worked on, a lot of that being my agenda, they had very successful nights in 2020. And so it really kind of told me and told our team, look, we got to stay focused on the issues. We got to stay focused on the issues that matter to Georgia. And certainly election security was one of those issues. And we dealt with that in the legislative session, year and a half ago now, because of things that we did see in the 2020 election that were caused mainly because decisions that others were making during the pandemic that myself nor the General Assembly had never weighed in on. And it was proper that we did that. And
yeah, completely. Incidentally, after the record turnout that you had in the primary, I was wondering whether or not you got any apology notes from Coca-Cola or Delta or anyone else.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get tickets to the All-Star game, wherever that might be this weekend. It's been, I won't kid you, it's been a little gratifying to see people writing
I bet.
stories about our turnout in Georgia after, Stacey Abrams literally was pressuring the Players Association not to, to boycott the All-Star game, pressuring the commissioner to move the game. They were successful in doing that. And then she flip-flopped and said she wasn't doing that. They didn't need to move the game.
Magically erased the USA Today op-ed. Well,
yeah. First time ever that somebody's been able to change a op-ed that they've written. It's incredible. But I mean, look, people realize that. They realize the hypocrisy in that, and people are writing a story now. They were remembering that Joe Biden, they even rolled Joe Biden out to say this was, Jim Eagle, whatever that means, and Jim Crow 2.0 on steroids. And they realized that Abrams reserved the domain name 3 weeks before we even had the final version of the bill. And it was all their messaging and how they profit off this personally and politically. And we pushed back and stood up for what was right and what we knew was in the bill. They didn't even understand what was in there. And then we have been justified by this incredible turnout. Listen, the Democrats in their primary had huge turnout as well. It wasn't as much as the Republicans, but still, they had massive turnout. Minority participation was up in the primary. And for a sleepy old primary election, we had record turnout here in Georgia, almost to the level of a presidential year. And so, there's nobody that can go out there and say, oh, well, this was, for some other reason. The fact is, it's easy to vote and hard to cheat. That's what everybody wants, no matter what side of the political aisle that you're on. And I remember I was telling my team the other day, Josh, I was on this Young Jocks radio podcast after the election. I spent 30 minutes with them on their predominantly African-American listening audience, and they peppered me nonstop with questions. Some of them just made me laugh. But I pushed back and I told the truth. And at the end of that, I said, listen, I can tell you all the truth. I can't make you believe me. But I said, is anybody else come on your podcast on the other side to answer questions about the bill? And they're like, that's a good point, Governor. You've answered every single question and nobody else is willing to come on. And I said, there's somebody lying to you here and it ain't me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, listen, you're setting the standard, not just for talking to the home team, but talking to everybody. And anytime you get, even if it's a primary election, anytime you get the sort of numbers that you got in that primary election, and then you begin looking for the general right away, is doing something right. And you and your team are definitely doing something right. I got to ask you about Georgia in general here, because it's once again in the crosshairs, not only with your race, but the Senate race there. And, you look back in 2020, evenly divided, as you just said. What does it look like? How does it feel in terms of 2022? Does this feel like conservatives are sort of reuniting here and becoming more of a team that we can look to as like the Georgia of old, the red state Georgia?
Well, listen, I tell people, I told them in my, victory speech the other night that the road ahead is not going to be easy. I mean, we're going to have battle-tested candidates on the other side that are going to raise just tens of millions of dollars from all around the country, from Hollywood, New York, Boston, every liberal billionaire bastion that's out there will be giving money to Stacey Abrams, which is why we need, podcast listeners and Ruthless podcast listeners and everybody else to, send us $5 or 5,000, whatever you can afford. Because this is a fight for the soul of our state, but it's also a fight for the soul of our country in a lot of ways. But I think the environment is completely different from what we saw in 18 and 20. In 18, it's different because I'm an incumbent governor. I've got a great record with a great team that we're going to talk about, and we're going to remind Georgians of what we have done, putting them first and not worrying about the noise of, some health expert that was getting paid to sit in their basement up in, New York or out in California and was trying to tell hardworking Georgians whether they needed to go to work or not, or whether, they could provide for their family or not, or their kids could be in school or not. And we didn't listen to them. We listened to our own people, and we listened to all the facts of what was happening on the ground in our state. and what our people wanted. And, we've got that record, and that's much different than the race was in 18, where I was labeled basically a racist and a voter suppressor. And our voters here are no different than that now. I've got an incredible track record for making historic minority appointments with good people who happen to be conservative as well and are doing a great job. But in 2020, we saw what happened when we're not focused on what our record is. And I think our state candidates ran on their record. A lot of the federal candidates, in my opinion, had great records to run on, but they just didn't talk about it enough. They didn't remind people enough. It's not enough for us just to say, the other side, they're radicals, they're socialists, they're whatever. We've got to be for something. We got to give people a reason to vote for us, because they know that we're going to keep our economy going. We're going to help Georgians fight through this disastrous 40-year high Biden inflation that's going on right now. We're going to be the ones fighting to make sure that their kids are in the classroom and that they're not being indoctrinated, and that we have fairness in girls' sports, that we're going to be the ones that are going to be up there, standing and having our men and women in law enforcement having their back and doing something about violent crime, and, not these defund the police, get out of jail free policies that are literally destroying major cities around the United States. Like, that is not where Georgians are. So that's where we're going to be.
Yeah.
And I think those two things are, completely different. The other thing is, our folks that stayed home in 2020, especially in the runoff, they saw what that got them.
It's so true. So, Governor, I'm glad you mentioned this, because we interviewed Selena Zito, a journalist from the New York Post, who'd spent some time down in Georgia talking to people before your primary. And she said it was actually amazing how often she ran into people expressing regret for sitting out that primary, for, not believing that their vote would count, and that they actually now understand and see the real tangible difference that it made by not showing up. And they're now like totally turned around on that.
No, I would agree. And I think a lot of those people, even if they were frustrated with me or someone else about the election or whatever, I mean, we've had our battle in the primary. Republicans are used to doing that. We're used to having, really tough, live scrimmages in our primaries that are hard hitting. But we also are used to coming together after that to make sure that our conservative agenda, fiscally conservative, making sure that we're, pro law enforcement, pro life, a lot of other things that we stand for in this state. And there's different ways you can do that, whether the heartbeat or adoption reform, foster care reform, going after human trafficking. We've done all of those things. So we have something for everybody there. We all know we've got to unite and beat Stacey Abrams. I mean, people know that she would take this state the way of California, New York, New Jersey, the way of Joe Biden. I mean, she took credit for, Joe Biden winning the presidency. She's taking credit for Senator Warnock's victory. And look what it has got us in Washington, D.C., a literal disaster at the border, 40-year high inflation, more regulations, more taxes. She's criticized me for returning $1 billion of taxpayer money to help them fight through this inflation. She's criticized me for suspending the gas tax so people are paying less at the pump. And she criticized the largest state income tax cut in our state's history to keep more money in Georgians' pockets so that they can fight through the disaster that we're dealing with in Washington, D.C. right now. And people know, whether they like me or not, or like some other candidate or not, they know that is way worse. She would be way worse. She would be supporting all of those policies versus keeping our state moving in the right direction. And I think people are remotivated and they are not going to stay home. In fact, I think the turnout in the primary shows that Republicans are motivated, and we got to have a ground game here to get people off the fence and off the sidelines, and people that are not registered. We got to get them in the game, and then we got to turn them out. If we do that, we're going to have a great night, November 8th, 2022.
Yeah, no, look, I totally agree. And listen, despite Stacey Abrams' newfound appreciation for election integrity, I don't think she ever really conceded in 2018. Did I miss that? Did that happen? Did she ever concede?
Well, I would just say this. I haven't talked to her. I mean, she said a lot of different things about, a lot of elections, but that's where she's, made a personal fortune, quite honestly. And, it's taken me and Marty 35 years as small business people and hardworking Georgians to get to the point where we are financially. And it is, one of the reasons I opened up when I did is I've been there on Friday night. Marty and I both have, where we barely paid the people working for us, couldn't pay all our suppliers. And we're wondering, are we going to be able to make it through this, great recession that we were in when Obama was president? And this was Friday night after Friday night, month after month after month. That is a bad feeling when you can't make your car, truck payment, you can't take care of your family like you want to. When you have a hard time putting food on the table, or have a hard time paying the people that have helped you build your business, where they can't take care of their families. I mean, that's a horrible feeling. And that's where a lot of the country was, and a lot of where Georgians were when we reopened this economy, small parts of it that we had asked to shut down to stop the spread and flatten the curve. But I know what that feeling is like. And that's something that I don't want our citizens to go through. And that's what we're getting from Joe Biden and Stacey Abrams and the Democrats in Washington, D.C. And I just think a lot of people are highly motivated here to get out and make sure that does not happen in the great state of Georgia.
Well, you've certainly helped highly motivate a lot of people. You're the toughest out in politics. There's no question about it. The eye of the storm, with everybody coming at you from left, right, and center for a better part of a year and a half. And here you are, probably in the strongest position of your political career, entering what is going to be a serious general election that all of us need to pay attention to. Governor, let us know, do you have a website that we can go to where we can help out?
Yeah, look, people can check us out at briankemp2022.com. Obviously, you can donate there if people want to, Georgians that want to give your time or treasure, you can sign up to volunteer. It's a great way to get us. I mean, look, we're going to need the help from all over the country. That's what the Democrats have been doing in Georgia for a long time. And I think the rest of the country knows how important Georgia is, just like Virginia was last year.
Yep.
Georgia is in that place this year. And I think we have a chance to really send a message and also to put something forward that Georgians and Americans can rally behind. And that's just good government and allowing people to have freedom and liberties and live their life and take care of their family and live to fight another day. We've been through some tough times. People ask me all the time, Josh, they're like, what's the one accomplishment that you really are most proud of? And I just tell people I'm proud to be governor of a state that has such resilient people. No matter what side of the political aisle you're on, man, people have really fought. Every family's been affected by the pandemic and civil unrest and a lot of other things that we've seen here, whether it was the Ahmaud Arbery killing or other things. And, we've had to fight through those kind of things and come together. And that makes me very proud.
Yeah, no, I can imagine it makes you pretty proud. You're sharing a ticket this year with a pretty good Bulldog running back. That's got to be sort of exciting at the rallies, huh?
Yeah, best one I've ever seen. I know a lot of people in Alabama and Texas and other places may disagree with that, but when I was I think it was probably a sophomore in high school, and I saw Herschel as a freshman run the 100-yard dash with a guy named Mel Latney that was an Olympic sprinter, and Latney just beat Herschel by a tenth of a second, but he weighed like 100 pounds less. And I was like, man, I would hate to get in front of that guy.
A lot of people hated to get in front of him for a long time, and now it's happening on the political scene. You have any observations about that Senate race?
Well, it's going to be a very tough race. I mean, the Democrats that'll be probably their top target, just like it will be for the governor's race. They'll have a lot of ammunition. Senator Warnock's got a great story to tell. I think Herschel does too. But it's really, I think the race is going to come down to like whose policies are going to be better to help Georgia families. And to me right now, the policies in Washington, D.C., they're putting other people first, not our citizens. And we're seeing that at the gas pump. We're seeing it at the grocery store. We saw it when the American Rescue Plan passed. President Trump did CARES dollars per capita based on populations in the state. Every state was treated fairly. Joe Biden ties it to unemployment rates. So it helps states like California, New York, and Illinois more so than our own state. And we warned them that that was a bad thing to do. And they went along with the leadership of the Democrats. And, Georgia's getting screwed by that. And that's something most people don't know about. But that's what campaigns are about, too. It's like, who's really going to put you first up there in Washington, D.C., and who's going to put you first at the Capitol? And, I want to leave I can only control what I can control. But, from my perspective, I want Georgians to know I'm going to put them first, no matter whether you're Republican, Democrat, or whatever, whether you vote for me or not. I'm going to be fighting for you every single day. And that's what this campaign is going to be about.
Well, you've led the charge in pushing back on the left, both in Georgia and now nationally, and you've certainly become a national figure. Your campaign has been incredible to this point. Keep up the good work. Keep us updated. Let us know how we can help. We're obviously very much invested in success here for the great state of Georgia and you, Governor.
Will do. Thanks for having me back.
Take care.